welcome. I know people will still be entering, but I think we've got a huge uh, agenda for today and some really exciting speakers. I'm looking forward to this so much, but let me start sharing just for a moment here. I'm Jane Schaefer-Kramer, and I am leading the committee within CGIA, California Geographic Information Association, that puts on the Community Forum events. And this is the first one under the new format. This is a group that used to be known as the California GIS Council. But that and that ran from about 2014 until maybe a year or two ago. And then it gradually started kind of morphing into something that is closer to the CGIA organization itself. And we're trying out this idea of, instead of having meetings that touched on a lot of different topics, we're just going to focus on one theme area of our California spatial data infrastructure. And so we're kicking this one off today with the elevation theme, in particular LiDAR, because as you will hear, we've reached a significant milestone, we being the entire community in the state of California that has been on the coordination side or on the funding side, on the planning side of making all of these LiDAR acquisitions happen for the state. And all of the acquisitions, I understand, have now happened, but I'll let the experts talk about that. Please enter your questions in the chat. We're going to try to address questions in real time. Feel free to, enter comments. And if somebody answers a question and you happen to know the answer, jump right in. Lisa is going to be helping me with note taking, and we'll have a Q&A summary written up afterwards that we'll eventually share on the CGIA website. So right now, I think, is there anything else I need to say for housekeeping? Please, only turn on your camera if you're going to be speaking, and stay on mute if you're not talking. We'll have open Q&A at the end as time allows. If something happens and you'll accidentally go off mute, Roland or I will mute you. So I think that's about it. We'd like to thank our sustaining members of CGIA. That includes California Tribal GIS, Dewberry, Parcel Quest, Shasta College GIS, Geography Department, UC Santa Barbara, University of Southern California Dornsife Spatial Sciences Institute, Underground Service Alert, and ARUP. Did I say that correctly? Roland. Yes. Okay, correct. Great. So thank you to them. And now I will stop sharing, and I'm going to turn it over to Nate Roth of the Department of Conservation.
And I have to find where the unmute button is. It
you're
moves as soon as you start sharing.
Right.
Is my screen sharing correctly?
Your screen, I can see it now, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
The prior test gave me a nice green border. It's not giving me that this time.
Uh-oh.
So thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm really excited for both the accomplishment that we're celebrating in terms of reaching functionally complete coverage of LiDAR for California, as well as the speakers that we've got lined up for today. Just moving relatively quickly. You should have the agenda in the chat, but a very brief overview. We'll be starting with a kind of a status update and a little bit on next steps and how to be involved. We will then we're probably not going to have the geology component As you might have observed, there was a significant earthquake here in California an hour and a half or so ago, and as a result, our seismic hazards branch chief will likely not be able to present today. We'll then have some on forestry and fire response use of it, applications of LiDAR in local government, some professional considerations for those of us as GIS professionals, and then use of LiDAR and related elevation data in flooding, 3D hydrography, and moving on to questions and answers. But really, kind of where are we? We have functionally complete collection of LiDAR that has now been acquired. It's not all publicly available yet. Some of that that will be occurring over the next probably couple years, given that some of it is just freshly collected as of the last few weeks. We've had a decade making the case for LiDAR. For those of you that may be coming in not terribly familiar with what LiDAR is using a laser-based scanning technique to produce a 3D representation, frequently called a point cloud, of the landscape. In this case, and what we're going to be discussing today, this is primarily LiDAR scanners based on a manned aircraft, though it can be collected using terrestrial drone or vehicle based collection tools. We'll talk a little bit at various points about the accuracy or the fidelity of the scan, and that's largely driven by two components within the data that's collected. The accuracy of the laser pulses, so measured generally in centimeters, how accurately can it measure the location of whatever the object is, and the density of the scan, so how many points are being collected to represent it in 3D. These point clouds are then processed into what we frequently call derived products, which are what most of you are most likely to be using. So this would be the digital terrain model or canopy height model or building footprints. Those would all be types of derived products. Getting to this has been many years of building partnerships along the way. And I want to, as we're moving along, to highlight a number of those partnerships. We have had both partnerships that have resulted in funding and partnerships that have resulted in the action, the justifications, and the building the constituencies to make use of it. On the federal side, I want to specifically call out the U.S. Geological Survey, who runs the 3D elevation program, administers most of the contracts that have collected this publicly available data, FEMA, NRCS, BLM, US Forest Service, who've all contributed both financially and intellectually to the collection of those. At the state level, we've had meaningful contributions from the Department of Water Resources, CAL FIRE, and my own Department of Conservation. And then thinking about actually some of our most valuable partners, groups on the ground locally, that make use of the data and have an incredible vested interest in it. We have a number of counties: LA County, Solano, San Mateo, San Francisco, numerous resource conservation districts, public works departments across several other counties, Sonoma, Humboldt, San Luis Obispo, have made significant contributions to these collections. We've also had at least one very notable academic partner in it, with UC San Diego and the Alert California program having made an enormous contribution to several of the collections across the state. We've also got a number of folks that I kind of consider orchestrators. These are folks that bring these partnerships together, initiate the conversations that result in the collections. Very notably, the North Coast Resource Conservation Partnership with Karen Gaffney, a number of other partners, Cass Green, and quite a few NGOs that have been very active participants in it. So I really want to thank all of those folks for the contributions they've made to getting us to this point. On the screen, you'll see a map that shows where we have quality level 0, 1, and 2 based on the USGS. You'll recall that I mentioned the point densities being one of the primary determiners. Quality level 1 is 8 points per square meter. That's the one that we've really been aiming for a lot of our resource management uses. Quality level 2, represented in green, is a lower density at 2 points per square meter, still useful for many, many things, and an amazing foundation to build on. And we have a few small areas that have overachieved and gone for what's called quality level 0, which frequently has higher point density data collected for it, but most germanely to the standard, has a higher accuracy within those points that are collected. And we've managed to do this and have that complete coverage with a patchwork of projects, but within a period of 7 years worth of data covering the state. And numerous of those older areas have efforts already underway looking at whether repeat coverage is starting to make sense. So this is an ongoing process, and it has been absolutely marvelous to be a piece of it, and to get to help to nudge it along the way. What I'm going to do now is pass along the presentation to Drew Decker. He is the state of California's data liaison with the U.S. Geological Survey. He has been for the last couple of years our primary contact point to the USGS for this and several other data collections, and has succeeded to that position following the retirement of Carol Ostergren from the USGS, to whom we owe an enormous debt for having kicked off so many of these projects. So Drew, are you ready for me to pass it over to you?
I am. Thank you very much, Nate.
Stop sharing.
And here, I'll try to share now. Let's see. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen now.
We can.
Hey, great. Thank you. Thank you, Nate. Yes, I'm Drew Decker, National Map Liaison for California. I'm calling in from San Diego, California. And indeed, we've been working with Nate and so many other people over the years. And I had started here with Carol back in the day. And Carol and I both worked on this project and others in the state. And been great to work with her and Nate and everybody else here. So I'm going to go a little bit back in time, give you some little background on 3DEP and kind of where we're going here with a few slides. And so let's see. Oh, here we go. So 3D elevation program, also known as 3DEP. So our goal here was the first bullet, complete acquisition of nationwide LiDAR, IFSTAR, a radar sensor up in Alaska, to provide the first ever national baseline of consistent high resolution elevation data, much higher resolution than the older data we had that was based on the topographic maps. Okay, and we're creating bare earth DEMs and 3D point clouds, which Nate also mentioned earlier. It is based on a project that we had worked on around 2011 called the NEA, National Enhanced Elevation Assessment, that had to get information on the business cases for the work. What are the benefits for it? Why should it be funded? Kind of laying out the groundwork for the project. That was kind of the first step here. And now moving into what we produced, we talked about the DEMs. The new standard now, as you can see on the upper right, is a 1 meter resolution DEM. We're going to use that and generate 10 and 30 meter resolution products, updating the older stuff based on the topo maps from this new DEM. Up in Alaska, for those that are interested, we have moved from a 60 meter resolution now to a 5 meter resolution, much better based on the IFSTAR sensor. And the other major product that we have is the LiDAR point cloud. A couple of examples here. Again, this being that the sensor that we have now collects only points, nothing else, but at a very high density, as Nate was pointing out earlier, especially with QL1. You can see several examples. This is a 3D building example on the left, downtown Chicago, I believe. So you see what you can do with the data there with the great detail on the buildings and their elevations. You can see a color-coded by elevation of a mesa feature on the upper right. And if you have before and after LiDAR, you can check the differences between the two. In this case, it's pre and post fire for an area heavily affected by a wildfire, right? You see the changes in vegetation there. And so again, going back to what Nate said, we have data underway everywhere. So we're going to have data like this at least one time over for all of California soon. And looking then at where we're going with 3DAP, at the end of last fiscal year 24, we had data available in progress for 98.3% of the nation. Okay, that's a lot. And given that we started 10 years earlier with very little data, we've come a long way. I have a little graphic that will show those different projects that Nate was talking about kind of as they appear over the lifetime of the program. On the right, you can see some of the different investments put into the project over the years, beginning in 2013. And again, it's all come together to create what you see here on the right now. Okay, this little graphic here should kind of auto-populate. You got some early project 2013, San Bernardino, 2014, 16, Southern California. It really gets going though around 2019, 2020. Really see a lot of other projects popping up in California. Last one's right here in the Mojave. They're letting it run again. Really got a lot going on in the last 5 years. Nate was pointing out the QL1 data. That was a big deal. A lot of that really came in the last few years. Okay, there's been a concerted effort in the state to make that possible. USGS typically will fund we considered it a baseline product to be QL2. We would do QL1 when we could, but we weren't always able to do that. And I think the state made great efforts here with all the partners to ensure that happened. Okay, so and a few other superlatives here on the left. Across the country, over 350 other partner organizations, the percentage of the total cost contributed by all these partners shown here on the lower left. So it was quite an achievement, I think, across the country. So where are we going with this? Well, instead of just 3DAP, we're looking at something called the 3D National Topography Model, 3D NTM. Okay, and it's designed to deliver the terrestrial component of the 3D nation by integrating national elevation hydrography now, okay, hydro and elevation data sets. So where we are now is, since we're very close to baseline for the country, we're going to start working on the 3D hydrography program, 3DHP, that is hydro derived from integrated with the 3DAP data that's recently completed. In the future, we hope to have connections to groundwater, wetlands, engineered hydro, and so this is going to be a direct derivative from 3DAP. 3DAP's not being left behind, though. We have the next generation 3DAP. Okay, it's going to have a little higher quality level. It's going to integrate now inland bathymetry. That means water bodies. It means larger rivers. Okay, that's kind of a first for us. And so putting them all together, we have kind of this future integrated 3D model here, right, where all surfaces of the, within the, not offshore, but all land surfaces will have bathymetric and especially the topographic LiDAR and other information together. Right, looking at other technologies, Nate talked a little bit about that. Yes, we did collect everything with airborne LiDAR, but it's a possibility of using other platforms, other sensors in the future. Not that we necessarily going to employ these right away, but it's possible, right? We have a next generation 3DAP. We're going to be open to other approaches to collect the data. And then to finally wrap it up, so what does this mean here in terms of a transition to the next generation of 3DAP? So we're moving really from kind of a QL2 objective to more of a QL1, along with 2 as well, okay? Working more with our partners on that. The scope is moving from just topo data to bathymetric data as well, okay? Inland bathymetric. Update frequency. before we used to not update anything unless the LiDAR or at least 8 years old, unless there were some other trying circumstances. In this case, we're going to aim more for a 5-year refresh. And then at the bottom here, you can see the commensurate additional costs and benefits tied to this. And Jane, perfect timing. I think I'm just about done here. And moving on to my final screen, here's my contact information. And I'll put this in the chat as well. We'll be able to work with folks on future projects through the new data collaboration agreement or announcements, and I'll put a link on that too in the chat. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Drew. And we have a request in the chat. Will these slides be available? Is this something you can share with us and we could post them?
Yes, I can share these.
All right, great. Thanks. All right. Well, thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Nate now.
Yes, thank you, Drew. I regret that Dr. Wendy Bohan from the California Geological Survey is not going to be available to for the geologic hazards presentation she put together. She is a marvelous communicator and a real asset to both our California Geological Survey as well as the state. But I guess one of the hazards that comes with being the seismic hazards and earthquake engineering branch chief is that when something happens, like the earthquake that did this morning, you may get pulled into other duties. So with that, I am going to move along to the forestry and wildlife response use case as presented by Rodney Hart. Rodney is a member of CAL FIRE's Sacramento Intel Group and is assigned to the Wildfire Forest and Threat Intelligence Integration Center, or for short, the WFTIC. He's been working with forestry in the forestry realm for more than 35 years. Started with the Tahoe National Forest before getting into the world of GIS and LiDAR, where he spent 25 years with U.S. Forest Service's Region 5 Remote Sensing Lab. He's been with CAL FIRE since April, and will be presenting on how statewide airborne LiDAR is being used to improve fuel modeling for the fire simulation used by CAL FIRE. So, Rodney, thank you for joining us, and take it away.
Thank you, Nate, and thank you, Drew, for that intro on all the bare earth model and how that has been going nationally for a while. It's some great information there. So, if you guys ever find yourselves in Mather, California, the WFTIC is located in building E, which is right around the corner from the Sacramento Operations Center here, and we are co-located with Cal OES. There's a number of different agencies that are here at the WFTIC, including representatives from the National Weather Service, U.S. Forest Service, California Public Utilities Commission, and whatnot. So I am going to be illustrating to you how CAL FIRE Intel intends to utilize the airborne laser scanning, which is the ALS data shown in blue in this point cloud image of a mixed conifer stand, to improve forest metrics utilized in our fire simulation software. Also, how CAL FIRE Research Development Innovation Group is hoping to use the data for visualization of wildfire response. The red pixels are from terrestrial laser scanning TLS data, which was something that I did a lot of work with the University of Nevada, Reno back in 2017, 2018. CAL FIRE Intel has a resource airplane, CAL FIRE Intel 641, stationed at McClellan that gathers area intel related to incidents, including efforts to utilize their imagery to create FODAR, which are the green pixels that you can see at the tops of the trees, particularly on the left side of the image. As I wait for things to roll here, CAL FIRE Intel 641 is primarily utilized for fire perimeter mapping and hotspot call-out later in an incident activity. These perimeters are used in the fire simulation software to show expected burning patterns in the short term. During the non-peak activity portions of the year, they capture images to evaluate post-fire ground conditions, as well as using Pix4D software to process FODAR for prescribed fires taken before, during, and after the activity to quantify the effectiveness of the treatment. CAL FIRE Intel uses the Wildfire Analyst software developed by Technosilva to generate simulations. The simulations results are dependent upon the three elements of the fire triangle, which is weather, fuel, and terrain. And more importantly, we need to know and locate the ignition source correctly. We utilize the best information available to locate the fire. In the case of the Summit incident from last Saturday, it was the Alert California camera's view seen as the dashed line that located the fire, and not the Irwin point that is generated, which would actually showed it on the freeway. It was actually about 1.5 miles apart from where the actual fire was and where the Irwin point was located. Once we have that location determined, the software will have the fire triangle data for that point. Weather is the most dynamic element, and that is compiled daily, while terrain is the most static, as Drew was showing, that these things are pretty static and gathered every 8 years. So we continue to use that same information. It is, unfortunately, the issue it comes down to is the fuels, which is the most subjective, as one cannot know exactly how much combustible material there is at any given location. This is where the vegetation data must be utilized and the structural elements of that vegetation defined to create a fuel categorization. Forest metrics have always been a challenge to quantify across a large area accurately. Forest metrics once relied entirely upon plot-gathered inventory data before the use of remotely sensed data could be quantified with the plot data and extrapolated across the landscape. With successive improvements to imagery sources and computational ability of hardware, vegetation classification has improved significantly, but structural information has lagged on accuracy, as the z-axis is information that is hard to pull out of a two-dimensional pixel. The statewide LiDAR acquisition should improve this, as this will fill in the gaps in the existing LiDAR data, as well as updating areas that have had stand replacing fire events in the last 5 years. Wildfire Analyst utilizes the vegetation and structural data available and classifies it into the standard fire behavior fuel model categories, such as SH5, which is high, low, dry climate shrub. Each of these fuel classes has a fuel loading and a fire behavior metric assigned to it. This ALS data will improve the structural data and thus improve the fuel model classification to provide a more accurate burn scenario for the fire simulation. Here's an example of how improved structural data will affect fire simulation outputs. This is a photo of TLS 204 plot installed just north of Brownsville, Yuba County back in 2018. This was an old growth white leaf manzanita site with patches of toyon, ponderosa pine, and California black oak intermixed. There was a lot of variability of structure in the site between clumps of oaks, isolated pines amongst the dense shrub field of decadent manzanita that was 3 to 5 meters tall. Technosilva utilizes a resampled 20-meter canopy height model grid, along with percentile heights, density slices, and canopy volume profiles, and a canopy cover raster grid that is derived from the ALS data to improve structural attributes. Here we see the canopy height model resample. The heterogeneity of heights highlights the differences between trees and shrubs in herbaceous areas, as well as in part some canopy closure information. The higher areas being the lighter, and the areas closest to the ground being the darkest. Here we see the baseline pixel-based vegetation and structural information from land fire in 2020 on the right. I placed 2 points that conform to where those photos were taken, and they're about 100 meters apart at the same fuel type is shown here as to be TU5, a very high load dried climate timber shrub. The initial forest metrics are on the left. This is the September 16th of 2024 fuel data with some structural improvements applied from ALS data, which was a 2018 collection done for the Plumas National Forest. The vegetation classification has been improved as well, as one of the TU5 points has become an SH7, a very high load dry climate shrub pixel. This makes sense considering the amount of decadent manzanita seen at the site. The improvements to structure from the 2018 ALS data collection are seen in the canopy closure values. With the Northern Sierra Province ALS data being applied to the fuel model classification this winter by Technosilva, the canopy height and canopy base height should change as well. Improved canopy closure values will affect how continuous the fuels are. The adjustments to canopy biomass show that there is much more fuel to burn than originally classified. This will affect how a fire simulation will respond. Using the weather data for the day that the park fire had started on July 24th, using a noon time, we started ignition at our 2 points of interest, and this is an 8-hour simulation using the 2020 fuel data, and it creates a 345.4 acre fire. The fire simulation reflects no active fire suppression efforts. So anytime we run these simulations, this is just, if we were to let it burn, this is what it would look like. Here is the fire simulation for the same time on July 24th using the improved 2024 fuel data, and it predicts a fire nearly 300 acres larger at 634.4 acres. A more continuous fuels that was derived from the ALS data have led to a greater fire spread. And this is why CAL FIRE Intel looks forward to further improvements to our fire modeling data with this additional LiDAR information that comes to us, as it will lead to better fire simulation results and help the folks that are out there on the ground, the ones that are actually actively fighting fires, our tankers that are going in and knowing where to apply their efforts to the greatest benefit. The ALS data will also be used to improve visualization of fire effects on the landscape and seeing the conditions that the fire may be burning into. Assistant Deputy Director Ben Rogers with CAL FIRE's Research Development and Innovation Group envisions using the data to allow CAL FIRE staff to be able to move virtually through the vegetation conditions. He wants to make it look like a video game. Until that time, the hope is to utilize the data to improve situational awareness with fire growth through the Contact Relationship Manager, our CRM. For larger incidents, an AGOL 3D scene is generated. The hope is to take what we see currently available through the CRM, this 3D view of the mountain incident from last month, and utilize the ALS data along with the building data to provide something that looks more like this. And here's our big drum roll. Will this actually work? And if the storage and bandwidth isn't a constraint, which is always an issue, creating fly-through reels to show the fire effects and fire response is the product that can be made. Here's a fly-through through some TLS data collected, applying the red, green, blue imagery to the point cloud. From this, you can easily imagine what Ben Rogers' long-term goal will look like. With improving data and technology, what was once considered fantasy is quickly becoming reality. This statewide ALS collection is a key part to that reality. And that's all I've got. Thank you for your time, folks. I will take questions at the end, I suppose.
Yes, we're holding verbally expressed questions and conversations for the end. Thank you, Rodney. Moving along into our local government uses. I am, again, though he might not need too terribly much introduction given this crowd, Dr. Steinberg is the Geospatial Information Officer for Los Angeles County, where he works with an amazing group of folks to accomplish their missions. Before coming to LA County, he has served as leader in public sector environmental research, has been a professor at Cal Poly Humboldt, and has earned numerous international awards for his scholarship. Similarly, he has a distinguished publication history with multiple books, edited tomes, journal articles, and presentations, much like we're about to get now, that are worthy of note. He continues to develop our next generation of GIS and geospatial thinkers as an adjunct professor with California State University, Long Beach. And it's a pleasure to have you here, Steve. Thank you so much for being with us.
Wow. Well, thank you for that introduction. I don't know where you found all that information. It makes me sound pretty good. And boy, tough following Rodney there, because I don't have slides. I just have me you get to look at. I'm going to say it in jest, but I blame the process that the fantastic QA/QC process that the 3DEP program in USGS requires means that we don't have our new LiDAR data yet. We flew QL1 flight, as Nate and Drew alluded to earlier, well, I guess late 2023. We're not anticipating receipt of that data until hopefully early 2025, once all the final QA/QC is done. So, so I'm just really going to talk to you about some of the ways we have been using LiDAR, how some of the new ways we're looking at using LiDAR in context of local government. And many of the things Rodney actually talked about play into some of the same kinds of things we are thinking about and starting to look at. So just by a little bit of level setting here, we did a LiDAR flight at QL2 in LA County back in 2015, early in the 3DEP program. So we're on our second flight, improving the quality level, but now we'll have a repeat coverage. So some of those ideas for change detection will be very interesting. Historically, and as was alluded to, most folks initially, they look at LiDAR as a way to get good surface topography and to build contours and digital elevation models and things of that nature. And certainly that was a primary use of some of our earlier LiDAR data from the QL2 flight. As we're moving into this higher density and some of the new technologies that you've seen pretty pictures of from Rodney, we're really thinking about what else can be pulled from the point cloud beyond just the surface topography. So I wanted to touch a little bit on a few of those things and how we have been and are hoping to move forward into some of these new uses. So certainly we will get a new surface topography, the sort of the standard data package that the 3DEP program provides as deliverables from this new flight. But one of the things we've been experimenting with, I had a partnership with UCLA and a doctoral student there a couple of years ago to see if we could actually pull not just trees as trees, which is fairly straightforward, but to start to understand based on the structure of the trees, the species. And in an urban environment, a complex urban environment like LA County with our cities, our street trees, and our urban wildland mix, that gets very complicated. We were relatively successful focusing on certain species that we were interested in on that pilot study based on the old data. So one of the things we're really excited to be looking forward to is, can we extend that with higher density data to do a better job of speciation? And for us in LA County, that's really focused on a few things. One, we are very interested in our oak trees here, and we made that one of our priority species to target with this research. And with QL2, we're hoping we'll be able to do the same thing, or QL1, be able to do the same thing now to start identifying our oak tree inventory across the county at a much more reliable and much more useful way. Historically, we would know our public trees, street trees, trees in parks, and so on. But understanding the inventory of these protected species in places we don't see from public lands or along streets and so on, in people's backyards, in large campus areas, out in more wildland areas, is going to be really useful. And I think a secondary piece of that tree mapping in general that you've already seen some pictures of, it does lead to, as anywhere in the state, we do have interest in understanding our fuels, our fire risk, our brush clearing around structures, and all those other things that go to the needs of CAL FIRE, LA County Fire, in understanding that situation. But I think for us, one of the really exciting things is that change detection too. The fact that we have older data, about 7 years old, 8 years old, and then we'll have this new data, we'll be able to start to get a sense of what has changed on the land surface itself, landslides. Of course, in the news, you've heard a lot probably about the Palos Verdes landslides and the damage to housing and infrastructure in that region. I think there's going to be some really interesting opportunities to look at those kinds of changes to landform and obviously to urban development as well, understanding the change to our urban environments, our built environments, and our natural environments like the vegetation. So that's kind of baseline stuff that we're really excited by as far as deliverables. Some of the other things I wanted to touch on, though, and maybe if you've worked with this higher density data you're familiar with, is the point clouds and the surface models are part of the puzzle. But now with the higher density, we can start to look for additional and maybe more detailed features. So some of the things we're going to be trying to look at with our new data include, I'll call it the simpler end of the spectrum, not just classifying a surface topography at the treetops, but classifying low, medium, and high vegetation, sort of your grasses and shrubs, your smaller shrub to tree, and then your larger trees. So getting a sense of the complete vegetation uh, you know quantification of the complete vegetation profile. Obviously, not just for fires, but for sustainability purposes. One of our interests here is we have targets for not just protecting a certain vegetation like our oak trees, but also understanding change to our tree canopy, our urban heat islands and things that are associated with having a better canopy map and a better ability to monitor canopy over time. So really getting a sense of not just its vegetation, which we could see in our aerial photography, but understanding, again, the height, the structure, and the types of vegetation. So bringing that LiDAR data together with our air photo program will be very useful to move towards those things. Similarly, sort of in this LiDAR FODAR point cloud combination, we've always done a fairly good job mapping our buildings and our building footprints, but being able to get a better 3D representation of building detail, not just the peak of the roof, but the shape of the roof, the shape and size of the building footprints, and not having to do as much guessing of what we can't see under canopies or in shadows, because LiDAR penetrates to the ground. We can actually get a better sense of the true shape and size of the buildings and the structures. And by extension, with the higher density, we have some opportunities to potentially understand rooftop structures, cooling units, chimneys, things of that nature. And while it may be a bit experimental, it's not entirely. Our public health department has been working with our geospatial team to do some work over the last couple of years looking for cooling towers that relate to Legionnaire's disease, to understand when they have an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease in a particular region, what cooling towers may exist in the area where the epicenter of that infection may be, and so on. So finding these things is doable with other methods. We started that process thus far using aerial photography, but again, having the additional detailed structural information and being able to extract where there are rooftop structures and do they meet the criteria that we may be able to tag them as objects that are of interest is going to be a really big game changer for us in that world too, in the built environment. Some other things on the built environment that we'll be able to be looking at and are exploring now. Just other infrastructure, poles, power line towers, other types of poles, street lights, and so on, and even in some cases the wires, where they're running between them. The higher density LiDAR gives us this. Again, fire risk is a big one with that. If you're looking at line clearing or fire risk, just understanding where that infrastructure is, while we might hope that we know where every pole or every structure in our infrastructure inventory is, I think the LiDAR is really going to give us an ability to pull out more of those kinds of data from the aerial LiDAR, and eventually also, I think, from other data we can bring together with that street level imagery and LiDAR, aerial imagery, drone data, and so on.
Hey, Steve, we're coming up on time.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up with two last quick things. And again, it's sort of playing off what Rodney talked about. I don't have the data in hand yet either, but on the video game idea, the visualization, one of the biggest things I think is really exciting to us is moving from what we can do somewhat with aerial photography, but much better with LiDAR, is being able to pull out individual objects. So we can do object level modeling and visualization of individual trees and individual buildings and individual structures to use in our geospatial analysis environment. And we've started to work on some prototyping using the gaming engines with some of our vendors to build that 3D model, object-based model of our urban and natural environment, with the idea that we will be able to do that kind of situational awareness and planning and evaluation of our environments in that walk through 3D kind of gaming, but not just as a pretty picture, but as actual data. So I will end it there and hand it back to Nate.
Thank you, Steve. It's so many opportunities, so many great things that we can do with LiDAR and with other 3D data. I keep talking about LiDAR, but the reality is it's the 3D component that for most of us is important. And LiDAR right now is the best available source for a number of those applications. With that in mind, it's important that we recognize there are components of what we can do with these data that we need to apply professional caution to. And with that in mind, we've asked Ryan Hunsaker, who is both a public land surveyor and a GISP, as the county surveyor for San Bernardino County. He's been active as a licensed land surveyor and GIS user and manager for many years. He served in leadership and on committees for both the California Geographic Information Association and the California Land Surveyors Association. And I am very happy to welcome you, Ryan. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nate. Yep, Ryan Hunsaker. I'm a licensed land surveyor, the County of San Bernardino County Surveyor for County of San Bernardino. Also GISP. I actually started my career in more GIS than land surveying, but I prefer to do GIS than land surveying, but just don't tell any of my land surveying colleagues that. I will deny it. Yeah, I would like to talk to you guys a little bit about the professional practice of land surveying and GIS. I hope I don't come across as the land surveyor, wagging my finger at the GIS profession, saying you're practicing land surveying, you're going to get in trouble. But we want everybody to be aware of state law as it is today. Make sure that it is on everybody's mind, especially with utilizing LiDAR and pulling data out of LiDAR, which is a great resource. Let me share my screen if I can figure this out. All right. So one thing I learned today in Drew's presentation, I didn't realize San Bernardino County was the first LiDAR participant in the 3DEP program. Yeah, I worked with Drew in 2013 and getting this LiDAR acquired for the County of San Bernardino. We use it, I won't say daily, but at least monthly on different projects. It's really paid for itself over and over, many times over, for the value that we put into it. But what I'm here really to talk about is state law. And I guess the question is, are you practicing land surveying? Hopefully it doesn't come across too dry, but it is a very dry subject. And like I said, I hope I'm not wagging my finger too much at GIS professions. But I will say what I'm going to discuss is a known problem in the GIS industry, and we're actively working on fixing this problem one way or another. All right, so what I have here is state law defines the practice of land surveying. And I've highlighted sections that I believe affect GIS professionals, especially when extracting data from LiDAR. Ask yourself, am I practicing land surveying while doing these? And I think as we go through these state laws, you're probably going to say more than once, say, yeah, I may be practicing land surveying. So at the top, basically says any person, state, county, private, if you do any of these following, you're practicing land surveying. Item 1, locate, establish, fix works on the earth that were within the practice of civil engineering. So what does that translate into plain English? Fire hydrants, power poles, roads, flood control facilities, buildings, anything an engineer put their work into to establishing on the earth. If you're locating, establishing, I don't think we do much retracement, but locating those on the earth could be deemed a practice of land surveying. Next, determining contours on the surface of the earth using the principles of mathematics or photogrammetry. So how that translates, using Esri's tools, build a terrain, extract contours based on LiDAR photography, you may be practicing land surveying. Getting into more of the geodetic side of surveying is, again, extracting horizontal or vertical positions on the fixed earth. Related to geodetic control points, stations, using the practice of land surveying, or stations by California coordinate system. So this is kind of tying in, not so much into what GIS professionals do, but it could be construed as practicing land surveying by determining locations of horizontal, vertical positions on the earth. A little bit more, that kind of hits a little closer home to GIS professionals, determining the information shown or to be shown on any map or document. And it says any map, related to anything that we just talked about above. And it gets better. Last couple items here: creates, prepares, modifies electronic or computerized data in the performance and activities of anything above. So storing that data into a, or modifying or preparing it could be determined to be land surveying. And then the last one, rendering a statement regarding accuracy of the maps. So why this has become a problem is recently, California State Board that regulates land surveying and civil engineering, they have actively taken up cases against GIS professionals. The board doesn't go out and try to hunt these things down. They were reported to the board, California State Board, and the board took action upon those GIS professionals. I'm currently working with a group of land surveyors and GIS professionals, both nationally and within the state of California, to come up with alternatives to these state laws to see if we can get them changed. Because it is recognized as a problem. If we look at these state laws and look at their history, you probably see a lot of them were created in the 1980s and 90s. Back then, LiDAR wasn't there in the 80s and 90s, and it took a lot of land surveying principles and procedures to create a topographic map of the Earth's surface. So that's where a lot of this state law is derived from. So like anything, technology advances quicker than the state legislature. So this has now become a problem. People are being reported to this California State Board, and we're trying to do something about it. I would say, kind of in closing, with this, please make statements on your maps and your data that this is not a product of land surveying of what you do. And that can probably help out to defend yourself if you're ever turned in for performing land surveying. You have that statement in the data or on your map that this is not a land surveying product and it should not be used as one. So, like I said, that's what I have to present to you guys. Hope it didn't come out too dry and too much cold water in this presentation, but it is important that everybody is aware of this. With that, I will turn it back to Nate.
Thank you, Ryan. There are already questions in the chat on this, and I'll note I am a member of the CGIA group that Roland references, and for a lot of these, there is no currently clean and 100% satisfactory answer on them. But you do need to be aware of that portion of the state professional code so that you can make an informed decision about data processes that you want to run. Moving on, I am pleased to welcome Wayne Lee, Senior Water Resources Engineer with Department of Water Resources, Manager of the Technical Evaluation Unit within the Risk Assessment and Mapping section for the floodplain branch at Department of Water Resources. He has numerous years in the private sector as a water resources engineer and hydrologist. At DWR, he is dedicated to utilizing his technical expertise and experience in hydrologic and hydraulic modeling to inform some of the very complex flood risk management planning design and emergency response activities, issues that we have here in California, particularly in light of climate change. So, Wayne, happy to pass the floor to you.
All right, thank you, Nate. Let me turn on my screen share. So, all right, and also let me turn off my video for now for better connections and also for you guys to focus on the slides more. So, yeah. So my name is Owen Lee. So I'm a senior water resources engineer and a manager of the technical evaluations unit here at the risk assessment mapping section at DWR. So I'm very glad here to be here today to share some of the insights into how we use this LiDAR data in floodplain management. So so let's begin with an overview of the LiDAR data usage in floodplain management. So in floodplain management, pretty much all use cases start with generating the topographic mapping from the LiDAR point clouds and creating digital elevation models. I'm sure you heard the word model term many times. So to capture floodplain terrains and critical floodplain control structures like levees, weirs, spillways, and structures and bypass and many more critical facilities that protect us in California. So from there, so we utilize basically the digital elevation model, the DEMs, in the modeling. So which is the hydrological hydraulic modeling. So is a critical the core part of our business here at my unit and section here at DWR. So we create models to inform various different applications flood related, for example, to inform a levee design and also a weir design expansion and any infrastructure feasibility studies and a lot of things, and also to inform land use planning. So we also use LiDAR in emergency response and recovery, and also we use LiDARs in climate change impact analysis. So there are just numerous many more applications that related to LiDAR usage in floodplain management. So I'm just gonna use few example projects we do here. Sorry, I think I mean to go back. So yeah. To demonstrate the use case. So the first project is the CVFET 2.0 San Joaquin River RAS model update. So many of you probably have familiar with the CVFET term. So it is a program that developed more than 12 years ago to collect LiDAR and bathymetry for the major Central Valley rivers and floodplains, and develop modeling to evaluate the floodplain boundary and risks. So over the past 12 years, many things has changed, especially if many of you probably already know that some dramatic changes happened in the San Joaquin Valley. So due to land subsidence, so that makes all the LiDAR data we collect more than 12 years ago and the model we built kind of obsolete in evaluating flooding situation and many other purposes. So that drives our effort in building collecting this new latest 2021 2022 timeframe LiDAR data, and also the effort of updating this model to reflect the current conditions. So you can see that this is a comparison of the new LiDAR data we collected compared to the more than 12 years ago LiDAR data. So the land subsidence in some areas are up to 8 to 10 feet high in the San Joaquin part of the bypass system. So in this model development we used because this is such a large scale modeling effort, so we used a lot of LiDAR products, including the latest 21, 22 LiDAR and bathymetry data collection effort that we partner with USGS. So for cost share, and also use various different USGS straight depth products in the 1 meter resolution for a lot of our regions. So and this comes up with the final model updated, so that we captured the most current condition on the ground and reflect in various rivers, channels, and floodplains. And we have this new updated CVFET 2.0 San Joaquin RAS model. So it's such a large model, so I think it has many potential applications, such as basin-wide feasibility study, and we are currently, for example, we are using this in the CVIPP 2027 update efforts, and also this model can be used for real-time flood forecasting purpose. For any local project planning design effort, we are also sharing this model with local agencies and partners to support that effort as well. So I think this is a kind of one of the foundational model that supporting our flood risk assessment and in California, so for the San Joaquin Valley. So we have the same effort going on for the Sacramento site. So that model is also under development, and mainly also benefited greatly from the new LiDAR data that's available through the USGS 3DAP program. So I think that that's one of the very critical modeling effort to support the Central Valley here in California. So another project our section we're working on is statewide of the advisory mapping. So the focus now shifting from the large scale data abundant and also well studied urban areas in the Central Valley to some of the less relatively less focused areas that was unmapped before. So we factor into few criteria such as availability of LiDAR and structure and the population inventories and also the disadvantaged community presence. So to create a workflow and a modeling approach to develop flood inundation maps for those areas. So unlike the FEMA effective floodplain firm maps, so they are regulatory mapping. So the maps we created here is only for information and advisory purpose. So in the first one of this project, we selected 17 study areas that was completed. So and we are currently working on 15 additional study areas in phase 2. So that will be completed end of this month. So this is an example of what kind of information we have. So this particular community is categorized as disadvantaged community with some important structures and populations. So and we are there's no previous mapping done in this detailed mapping done in this community. So we this is identified, and then we developed the maps and models to show the true flood risks for awareness and outreach purpose. So this is another great example of how we use LiDAR data. So and the third project we worked on is the climate-informed flood inundation mapping pilot study. We partnered with FEMA, between DWR and FEMA. We developed this pilot study for Tuolumne watershed. So basically, we're kind of trying to quantify the climate change impact and how it translates from the whole changing in temperature and precipitation, and how does that translate to runoff generation and also flood inundation. So there are so many technical details in this whole workflow, including the climate change science and hydraulic modeling and flow frequency analysis. So I'm not going through that. So I'm just gonna show you some end products. So this is a we are looking into the future for like 2 planning horizons for city of Modesto, which is running through by the Tuolumne River. So how the floodplain 100-year floodplain looks like into the future under climate change. So you can see the FEMA regulated floodway and the FEMA 1% 100-year floodplain as blue in the background. So if we look at the 2040 planning horizon, so we quantify the flood inundation based on probability. So we have this 50% exceedance probability inundation as yellow and 25% exceedance probability flood inundation as orange, and also the red is the 5% exceedance probability flood inundation. So, and also we are looking based on different planning horizons, the flood risk may change into the future. So, so this pilot study we partnered with FEMA really kind of opened up the window for looking into the future and quantify, see how the risks in the community, local communities will look like into the future. So depending on your planning horizon. So if you are designing for some critical infrastructures and facilities, you can look into the future, see how you want to mitigate that kind of impact. So so I think in the meantime, so we have a various different scoped LiDAR bathymetry data collection effort that's we're planning to supplement our current modeling and mapping effort to make our models better, more precise, more accurate to reflect the current conditions. So those are the things we scoped in the San Joaquin Basin and the Sacramento Basin. So and also we are not only building collecting data and building models. We are also sharing this data and model and product with the communities. So this is one of the key focus in our unit and the section here. So this chart shows a kind of a breakdown of type of request we received from the public, our partner agencies, from the state, and also from federal level. So we're kind of sharing the LiDAR data and the product, the models and the other technical data to the other to the public. So this is probably I remember, if I remember this correctly, this is for calendar year 23 and 24. So basically we probably have a data request every week on average to share with either it's LiDAR related or the models we developed that can help support local agencies and partner agency at the state or federal levels. So this is also our major focus as well. So I think
Excuse me, Wayne. Yeah, we're running short on time. So
yeah,
this is
I think
fascinating though. I'm
yeah.
loving it. So thank you.
So yeah, this is my last slide. So actually, so I think I'm ready to take some questions afterwards. So
Thank you. Yes, we'll collect questions either in chat for a more rapid response or hold for a brief discussion following. Thank you, Wayne. It's always interesting to hear the many ways that it's been used in those hydrologic and flood models for portions of the state are an incredible example of how the detail available improves model outcomes. Now I'd like to turn to the hydrography of the state writ even larger. The 3D hydrography of the state is coming. USGS is transitioning away from the National Hydrologic Data Set that you may have known from a past to one that is derived much more directly from 3D elevation data with a requirement that it be LiDAR or equivalent level of fidelity. And with that in mind, we have both Eric Fintel and Joel Osuna Williams coming to us. They have been partners to the Department of Water Resources for many years now on the development and maintenance of the National Hydrologic Data Center. Joel is the Senior Project Manager at the Center for Geospatial Science and Technology at CSU Northridge. He focuses on using GIS for hydrography, as well as conventional and renewable energy applications. Eric, a peer of his, is a project manager at the North State Planning and Development Collective at CSU Chico. His current work focuses on the environmental, agricultural, and hydrologic data production. Both Joel and Eric centers are in collaboration, as I noted, with the Department of Water Resources on hydrography data production and the stewardship for the state. So with that, I would like to turn the floor over to the two of you.
Thanks, Nate. This is Joel. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction. And thank you all in the audience for your attendance. Like Nate mentioned, we're going to present on how we are using high resolution LiDAR to support hydrographic data production and hydrography stewardship for California. So many of you already know that the nationwide authoritative hydrography data products have gone static, as both Drew and Nate just mentioned right now. They include the National Hydrography Dataset, the NHD, the Watershed Boundary Dataset, the WBD, and the NHD Plus dataset. All of these were provided by USGS and are still being provided by USGS in their static form. More recently, USGS has transitioned over to a new program called the 3D Hydrography Program, or the 3D-HP. This new program aims to leverage how we have more LiDAR available and higher quality LiDAR now more than ever before through USGS's 3D elevation program, or the 3DEP program. 3D-HP requires new hydrographic data be derived from 3DEP LiDAR, and as such reinforces high fidelity between hydrography and the elevation data available through the USGS. Hydrography produced in such a way is called elevation-derived hydrography, or EDH, and through USGS is to be structured by a new data model, a schema, and various technical specifications developed by them. The outputs of this new program and approach to producing and maintaining hydrography results in higher resolution, higher accuracy, and more reliable hydrography data products. The work we're doing right now in cooperation with the California Department of Water Resources aims to create hydrography that complies with USGS standards in order to contribute to nationwide 3D-HP and that nationwide data set. In order to accomplish this, we rely on 3DEP LiDAR at quality level 2 or quality level 1 as required by the USGS. We utilize 1 meter or better resolution digital elevation models that come coupled with the qualifying LiDAR collections. They are referred to as the original product resolution, or OPR DEMs, and USGS requires us to derive the hydrography from the DEMs set to a resolution of 1 meter, either natively or resampled. And the hydrography derivation process is complex, it's iterative, and it's semi-automated. It relies on tools just as much as it relies on trained people that know best hydro modeling and mapping practices. The core workflow itself aims to derive hydrography from the process DEMs and really addresses challenges like breaching barriers of flow, and of course, making the data 3D by enabling and populating z-values or elevation values for every vertex that makes up the data. One of the bigger challenges in this process is ensuring that the data meet all of USGS's EDH specifications in order for the final product to pass their QA/QC checks and then be considered for integration into the national data set. We have developed specialized QA/QC, editing, and compliance tools to help accomplish this. And this is a very robust and pretty complex process, as the specifications to meet are numerous and they're very specific.
All right, thanks, Joel. So I'm going to speed through these last few slides, so hopefully we have some time at the end for questions, so I apologize. But real quick, what we have here is the tool sets that we've been building out right now. They're based in really kind of three buckets. One is, the prep and the breaching and derivation tools all in one bucket, and then edit tools where we need to go in and work with the data and make corrections when the derivation process doesn't get it quite right. And then, like Joel said, the compliance, which is the biggest lift. And in the compliance, we've made a lot of effort to try to automate things. So where we can, we flag them and do auto fixes. And where we can't auto fix, we flag so we can come back for a manual fix. So one of our goals with this project with DWR is that at the end of this project, or once we get far enough along, we will make these tools available to the public so people can work with them, that they can edit them or make them better as they see fit, and really just to kind of benefit the community as a whole. But we're going to move into the next slide here, and then we're going to do a quick kind of just a view of one of the tool outputs that we have. And this is the density comparison tool that we have. So NHD is a 1 to 24K product. EDH, we're typically looking at a 1 to 3K or 1 to 5K. We kind of call that local resolution. And so we've developed a tool that will go in and look at our final product and give us a spatial overlay that shows the original NHD flow lines. It'll show our derived EDH flow lines, and then gives us a report for each area, how the density increased. And so our tool basically goes into your project area, creates a 1 square mile cell grid for the whole project, and then gives us a result like this and builds into some other reports we have as well. So we're going to stay on the same subject here and go to the next slide, where we're looking at comparisons of density. And this is really just highlighting how different the two products are. So on the left, we have the NHD at 1 to 24K. On the right, we have the EDH. This is probably slightly oversampled, but really trying to illustrate here, how much denser the network's going to be, how many more segments, how much more we're seeing here. And this product really is showing where channelization is and where flow might be. It's not doing any seasonality components. That's a whole nother topic that USGS will be taking on. And then additionally, we're going to have higher accuracies, as Joel noted. We'll see that in this next slide. So here we have the NHD line work, which was really kind of more of a cartographic product. It came from the topo maps and was updated over the years in the NHD to NAPE imagery or other products that may have been out there to help try to align things better. And then we have, in blue, the EDH line work, which was, modeled and extracted out of the DEMs that are based off of QL1 or QL2 LiDAR. So you can see that EDH line really aligns well with the shaded relief we have. It follows channels better. It's just a more accurate product versus the NHD. So now that we've looked at a couple samples of what the data looks like, we're going to talk about our project status. So we have 3 projects ongoing right now, 2 in Northern California, 1 in Southern California. We have chosen a HUC 12 in Northern California and a HUC 12 in Southern California, and run them through the full derivation process and the full compliance process, and submitted them to USGS as part of a pilot project to check for accuracies. As expected, they came back and needed some changes. That's not unusual when we talk to other people that are working in this space as well. And so right now we're in the stage where we're prepping to go into our second production. So we're trying to fix some of those errors and address those errors in our tools so they get flagged so we can find them, so that we can clean them and make sure we are good before we get them back to USGS. So our goal right now is to have a second submission into USGS in late January, early February, with a third and final fully compliant submission in spring. And through that, we'll continue to adjust our tools and build them to do what we need them to do to flag this data. And then finally, next steps. We currently, in collaboration with DWR, submitted a DCA proposal for the Upper Feather River watershed through USGS. This is a mechanism they have in place that allows for some cost sharing to happen. We don't know the status of that. There's a lot of uncertainty in the federal budget right now, so we don't know exactly what's going to happen. But even if it doesn't get funded, this is an important area to DWR as part of the State Water Project. And we will probably do this project regardless of whether the DCA is approved or not. We're going to continue to work with USGS to meet their standards. That goes back to our previous 2 submissions, updating our tools and our processes and our workflows to make sure that we have fully compliant data. And then we want to expand where we're working in California. We, like I said, we have a Northern California and Southern California projects. We want to find some other areas that have different topographies and challenges so we can continue to test our tools and tune them and modify them as needed to be able to work across California as a whole. And then to continue to do outreach like this, to do presentations and share our work and our tools with folks. We're always happy to meet with people and talk about the project, talk about what EDH is, what USGS expects, and help them through any portions of this type of work that they might want to do. And with that, I just want to thank everybody for their time. If there's any questions at the end, I think Joel and I will be happy to try to answer.
All right. Thank you so much. I realize we're leaving very little time for questions. Nate, do you want to wrap this up?
Sure. Yeah, I regret that there isn't a lot of time for questions. Thank you to all. Thank you to all of our presenters. I really do appreciate the time and effort that it takes to prepare, especially to prepare relatively short sets of materials. I find that that's frequently far harder than a longer format. So really, thank you so much for your time and efforts. I also want to extend my thanks to Jane Schaefer-Kramer, without whom this would never have gotten pulled together. Other members of CGIA's leadership, Roland Martin, Jacob Mark, Lisa Maroon, Chad Miller, all folks who have contributed in some ways to making this happen. I really do appreciate what you do. CGIA itself, its sponsors for giving us the platform for doing this. And honestly, the entire GIS community that has at various points responded to the sets of surveys that have gone out, sponsored by the USGS, that help build the use cases that we relied on for establishing the need and getting the resources pulled together to make the collections happen, and all of those partnerships that have resulted from them that I'm sure will continue to benefit us all. I think we're pretty much right at the end. Do we want to try to take any questions?
Nate, can I make a quick comment?
Yeah.
For whatever it's worth, I do serve on the 3DEP work group for the NGAC, the National Geospatial Advisory Council, and we have ongoing discussions about how to make recommendations. We don't have authority to improve the 3DEP program going forward. So if there's things you learned about here that you would like me to know about to take forward to that committee, we meet monthly. I'd love to hear from you. I'm happy to put my email in the chat.
Okay. Steve is volunteering to hear all your complaints about the 3DEP program, and as well as the compliments. And I hope and I believe that there should be many of those. Okay, Roland, I see you've got a hand up.
Yeah, Nathaniel, that was a really great question. So I just wanted to try and squeeze this one in before we let everyone go. How or where do we go to find LiDAR data for our area? Is it currently available for download?
Yes, let me pull and paste in a link to my preferred source. It is the LiDAR Explorer hosted by the U.S. Geological Survey, pulls from the same sets of data sources that inform the National Map Viewer and its download facilities, which you can get to essentially the same. I just find that the 3-depth LiDAR Explorer to be a slightly more direct route to it. I will note that data is becoming available in many cases. For example, you can see that with an example of that in the Sierra Nevada collection that has 13 out of the 14 work units, which are sub areas of it, are currently available as provisional data. There's a little bite taken out of it. We're waiting for that to come up. So you will notice that many of these larger collections will come in subsection by subsection. What you can then use the LiDAR Explorer to identify your area of interest. It can give you a direct link to the to download the individual tiles you may have of interest, and with a little creativity, you can pull the URL for those and do a little bit more exploration on the underlying web-based file system that they have available. I know a number of folks have written quick little Python scripts to pull the tiles of interest in a more automated fashion. And yes,
I just
Carol,
want to,
go ahead.
oh, go ahead. I just want to point out that there's still some stuff in the chat, and Lisa and I will be following up to get answers back to y'all. If anybody wants to save the chat, if you haven't already figured this out with Zoom, if you go up to the top right of the chat window and click on the 3 dots, you can save the chat. It'll put it in somewhere in your C drive in a folder called Zoom. So that's all I wanted to interject. But anything else, Nate?
I think I've covered what I planned for this. These are the types of things that I can talk about all day. So if you have questions, please do send them either into the chat right now or pass them along as they come up.
Right. Well, thank you. Nate did a lot of work pulling together this great lineup of speakers. And he already mentioned the members of the coordinating committee that are putting this forum together. We're thinking about doing another one in about 3 months. And we've been asking around for some suggestions for what's another important spatial data infrastructure theme for our community. And the next 2 that have been suggested, one is roads and the other is addresses. We'll see what we can do. If anybody has ideas for those speakers and things like that, or if there's another theme that you'd like to see us explore on a future meeting, just go ahead and you can contact me. Most of you probably have my email because I send out a lot of emails and we'll get them incorporated in our planning process. So we're past time now. I think we peaked at 186. We had well over 300 registered for this. So I'm blown away by the interest and the attendance. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Jane.
Thanks.
Thanks for hosting. Bye.